Hi, Lip Chean. Thanks for helping with my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Cool. Hi, my name is Lip Chean. I'm currently working with Anaplan, and Nathan and I used to be colleagues in Anaplan before Nathan decided to pursue his dream and join NASA. So in my job, I was a solution architect in Anaplan, helping clients build a planning system using the tool Anaplan. But now I've joined the optimization team, which is to help customer optimize their Anaplan system in a nutshell. So that's what I do.
And you also live in Malaysia.
I do.
And I actually talked to a gentleman last week, I think. He's from Malaysia too, and he moved to Canada, and he's working in the space industry. And he was like talking about the difficulties of if you're a U.S. citizen, it's like really easy to get a job. Well, it's not easy to get a job, but it's one less barrier to getting a job at like NASA. But if you're not a U.S. citizen, then it's pretty much impossible to get a job at NASA, I think. And so he was talking about his challenges of working in the space sector, but apparently he's been able to find ways. He says, if they shut the front door, go through the window.
What does he do?
I just drew a blank. I wish I was more interested in how he got to do it than what he actually did. So
cool. No worries. This is a interesting project. I mean, it's cool that you actually got to talk to so many people, and I think you probably try to grab some strangers when you're in your travels. And I mean, that's just an assumption based on the different background I see in the videos that you do. But yeah, it's cool that people are willing to stop and have that chat, because I'm sure everyone has an opinion about space.
Yeah, a lot of people feel uncomfortable sharing their opinion,
Really?
But a lot of people don't mind. So it's the thing. But talking about opinions about space, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon again for the first time since 1972?
I did not know that until we started arranging for this chat, and did a quick maths in my head. That's like what, 52? That's going to be 52 years in between those two launches. So the first question that I have is, why half a century, right? So yeah, I didn't know. So after that, I heard about it. So my question is, why the half-century wait?
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. I kind of struggle with that too, and I've heard a lot of talk. But I think if you go back to why we did it to begin with, was, if you look at like in the 1950s and the 1960s, do you know which country put the first thing in orbit?
That would be Russia, right? With the dog.
Well, the first one was just a radio transmitter, went beep, 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 and it's called Sputnik. But you're right, they're the ones that put the first dog in orbit, first living thing, first, human in orbit. And, it was really looking like Russia was going to dominate space. And, we were like, there's no way we could catch up with them in the short term, but if we create this very long-term goal, maybe we could turn the sprint race into a marathon and beat them that way. So,
but during that time, that was like the height of the Cold War, wasn't it? And of course, that's the famous John F. Kennedy's speech about doing difficult things. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and this is actually the 60th year anniversary of that speech that was given in 1962 here in Houston.
Right. So it means that after the speech, so 60 years ago, there would be a 1962. If they're sent up 1972, so it's after the speech. Then it took a decade before the U.S. actually did the space launch.
Well, actually, 1969 was the first time we stepped on the moon. 1972 was the last time. So Yes,
Right. So 69 was when Armstrong landed.
that's right.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah. So I mean, we were talking about the half a century wait, and I think you're building up to that story.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people were like, well, you landed on the moon, you beat the Russians. Why do you need to go back?
Mm,
It costs a lot. You know, a lot of people, I think people think it costs a lot more than it did. But uh, yeah. So, you know, essentially the lack of public support and the high
mm.
cost led to them stop going to the moon, and we haven't been able to go to the moon since 1972. So
Right. And the US decided to go back after or before SpaceX made it a bit more affordable.
well, NASA and various presidents have been talking about going to the moon ever since 1972.
Mm,
Like George H. Bush back in the late 1980s, early 1990s talked about going to the moon. George W. Bush in the early 2000s talked about going to the moon and building a base
mm,
on the moon. And then really the plans got accelerated under the Trump administration to go back to the moon. And we've gone from having PowerPoints to actually having a rocket that's on the launch pad being tested to go to the moon. So I think this time is real, and those other times were kind of false starts.
very cool, very cool. Yeah, yeah, very cool. And I think it's an important step, I guess, for humankind. Yeah, because being on Earth, I'm sure you've heard about this a lot. When will Earth actually end? Nobody knows, but we seem to be feeling a little bit of that on a daily basis with all the different climate change, all the floodings, all the extreme droughts and extreme heat wave. We don't know. We don't know. And I guess I think it's actually good that US is leading in this case. Um, I don't know enough about finance or economics to say this, but US seems to be able to just punch out a lot of funds if they need to, if they sort of like set their um, sight on something. You guys, so I think it's actually good that yeah, you guys have the means to do it.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting to say that. I think the COVID vaccines might be a really good case in that. You know, we went from not having a vaccine to
Mm,
essentially having what 80-90% of the population vaccinated within a year and a half, which seems pretty. I mean, we went from nobody can get a vaccine to the essential people get a vaccine to anyone could get a vaccine to would you please get a vaccine
indeed,
really
indeed, indeed.
quickly.
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, and after we agree to have this chat now, I start thinking a little bit about this. So I have a couple of questions. Maybe you can help provide some enlightenment. No, I was thinking, if someone is to make Moon a place to stay in, is it actually possible to? I mean, it's possible to create O2 and water for sure, but can we actually retain those on Moon the way we retain it on Earth? I was thinking it's probably a gravity issue, but
yeah, my
here,
understanding is they would just kind of float
float.
away. Yeah,
Mm.
that the moon's gravity isn't strong enough to maintain an atmosphere.
Interesting, interesting. How about water? Is it the same for water?
Well, I mean, I think the extreme heat and the extreme cold is the problem. If
Mm,
you're in the sunlight side, it's like you know
evaporates.
200 degrees Celsius or something. And if you're on the shadow
Dark
side, I think
side.
it's like negative 200 degrees Celsius. So either
Ah,
your water has become air and it's gone away, or it's frozen.
right. Yeah, and I think 2 days ago I read this news article saying that we found another Earth, like what 300 light years away. I'm not sure if that's real or just some sort of fake news, but it just popped up on my news feed. I read it for a little bit, and 300 light years, right? Okay.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the planets that we found over 5,000 planets around other stars. And of course, the ones that we can see are the bigger ones and the ones that are closer to their stars. So that those, it might be about the size, but I mean, a light year is how long it takes for light to travel. Is the distance that light travels in 1 year. So for us to go like 300,000 light years would probably take us, a billion years.
I don't know if it's 300,000 or 300 light years. Let me try to dig up that news article. I'll try to send that to you again.
But even 300 light years, I mean, that still might be a million years before we could get there.
Yeah, indeed,
So,
indeed.
Yeah. And by the time we get there, there might be people.
Maybe.
It'd be like one of those alien stories, where the aliens come to take over, but we would be the aliens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movies about people being in deep sleep, and they start their voyage, and then by the time they arrive there, it will be like tomorrow when they wake up.
I mean, it kind of makes, looking at the logistics this way makes the aliens being aggressive and mad a little bit more understandable. I mean, if I went on a million-year voyage for this new house and I found that there were people there and I couldn't take it over, I think I'd be like, no, I've already spent a million years trying to get here, so sorry.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
But what do you think about us going back to the moon?
No, I think it's cool. But what is the objective of this trip though? Is it just to revisit it, or do you have like some brand new scientific objective in mind?
Well, I think that the problem is there's lots of little objectives, which makes it harder to captivate people's attention. But since the last time we went to the moon, we found that there's these permanently shadowed craters near the poles of the moon where we've detected water ice that's like frozen there, which could be a resource for future space exploration. The meteors are constantly hitting the Earth all the time, but most of them burn up in the atmosphere. The ones that don't, most of those land in the ocean. And the ones that actually do land on land, their evidence doesn't stick around that much because of weathering and, growth and things like this. But the moon's been traveling in the same volume of space as the Earth, and a proportion of those same meteors and asteroids have been hitting the moon. But it doesn't have an atmosphere, so nothing burns up on the way in. It doesn't have an ocean, so nothing is like hidden by the water. And it doesn't have weather. So once it's hit the moon, the only thing that's going to cause it to disappear is something else hitting the moon. So it's almost this perfect record of sort of the history of the Earth moon system. So we could find out more about, how often is the Earth being bombarded by meteors. I mean, there could be, kind of like patterns to it where every 10,000 years there's like a huge a set of rocks hitting the Earth. And also, rare earth metals actually come from meteors. So it's potentially that there's a big reservoir of them on the moon as well. So those are just some of the reasons.
Right. Yeah, that's actually interesting because I never thought about it that way. Meteors hitting the moon and then keeping like a perfect original record. And yeah, that could actually provide a lot of interesting scientific discovery for humankind. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
And some people see it as a preparation for going to Mars. Let's if we can't have astronauts, kind of exploring the moon, then maybe we're not ready to send them to Mars. So.
I thought there was a group of people being trained to head to Mars on a one-way trip. Is that some sort of a marketing gimmick, or is that actually still ongoing?
Yeah, so there is this company called MarsOne,
Mm-hmm.
and they, put out a call for colonists who want to go to Mars, and it would be a one-way trip, and they would fund it by turning it into like some type of reality show and get the money that way. Um, but the company really never ever had more than like the CEO and a graphics artist. That was like the entire company. So
Hmm.
they got a lot of volunteers and a lot of interest, but until you start hiring engineers and you start building stuff and you have an HR department, I don't think we should take them very seriously.
Mm.
But
Yes.
yeah, and some people confuse that with like NASA or Elon. Elon's very big on you. You should have a way to get back. You should not
Hmm.
no one-way trips like so.
Yeah. I mean, unless Elon is determined, then I think that has a bit more substance to the whole project. But otherwise, yeah, I think it sounds like a scam that having just a CEO and a graphic artist.
Yeah, and unlike SpaceX, which is
Hmm.
determined to build a city on Mars, and has built thousands of rockets, and is has thousands of employees, and
It is
uh,
very cool what they do with all those satellite in at the right distance away from Earth, and then having all those collision detection algorithm on the different satellites. It's very cool. That's gonna bring information availability to humankind to another level, I reckon. Yeah. Anyone, anywhere can literally go online at that point. That is very cool what he does.
have you ever watched Terminator?
Yeah, one and two, not the others. Actually, not even one, just two. Yeah.
Uh, because in it talks about Skynet, and then you have like this
Mm.
robotic humanoid figure that's out there to capture somebody, and you kind of like look at what Tesla or SpaceX is doing with a Starlink, so that's like Skynet, and then
Mhm.
they're also creating a humanoid robot. So it's kind of you're starting to see the pieces come together for that future world.
Are they trying to build a humanoid robot? I know they do a lot of
Tesla
things. Tesla.
Tesla is
Hmm.
called
Interesting.
Optimus.
Hmm. Because I know they're doing something about the Neuralink. They have a boring company. They have Tesla. They have SpaceX. I didn't know about this one. So it's sort of like a side project within that Tesla, from the sound of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
They think that if we could create AI to allow for full self-driving, that they're
Mhm.
basically created AI that could do anything. And so all you have to do is create the machine.
But coming back to the moon, I think we need options. But the speed of which it is happening is way too slow. Or maybe it's just me looking at it from a human's point of view, because we only have a lifespan of what, 70, 80, maximum 90 years. Or maybe this kind of things really does take that long a time. But I do reckon though, we are constantly caught up with petty things from a grand scheme of things. So I think we can definitely accelerate this whole effort if we make it a priority. But at the moment, not enough people, not enough administration is prioritizing this. So it's a shame, but it's a good thing someone is still doing it. And yeah, in that case, I'm sort of glad that US being a country that can print unlimited USD is the one behind all this.
Um, but I guess in terms of people's priorities, do you
Hmm.
think more people should be excited about it, or do you think maybe it's kind of like okay the way things are?
I think we should. Yeah, I mean, even though we're just talking about moon, if you sort of like step back a little bit, it can be just about space. And then there's this whole romantic idea about space being the great unknown, which it is, that does allow us to expand our imagination and our horizon, so that we're not so caught up in the little things in life. And so I think if you can sort of start kids early on this kind of like space study, or even on a smaller scale, we can just bring them to the sea and have them study a bit more about the sea and the ocean. And because the sea and ocean is pretty wide as it is, it can um, sort of what's the term, excite, motivate someone to think bigger. So even though we are talking about moon, I think this whole space study, and at least to get people excited about it, does help them in other areas of their life. And just and beyond this kind of a philosophical thinking, there's always the science aspect to it as well. If you can get more people to be excited about science, engineering, and maths, I think that is not a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you get people excited about solving problems of any type, engineering or social.
Indeed. In space, there's an unlimited amount of challenges and problems there. So if someone can be inspired enough to start going down that route, even though there are limits to a person's capability, maybe they reach sort of like a half a level and solve some more earthly problems, which is also great. We can,
Yeah, I mean, the key is about unleashing the imagination and the energy, and then to innovation, that type of thing.
Definitely, yeah. We need leaders who can sort of like give great speeches like what John F. Kennedy did. That one was great.
So whenever you think about the future of humanity 200 years from now, what does it look like to you? I mean, are we still all on Earth, or do we have like people throughout the solar system that are living on the moon, on Mars, and the orbit around Earth, taking trips to like the moons of Jupiter, the moons of Saturn? Like where are we in 200 years?
Yeah, I think more and more of us would be, I mean, I'm more of a if I have to sort of like think about it right now with the way the Earth is heading, I would think more and more people would be inside buildings where the environment is more controlled. But at the same time, I think people will start to think beyond Earth as well. Maybe start to put more funds and effort into exploring space. But 200 years is not a very long time, I think. So maybe we could be living in space stations, more ISS-like structures in space. But yeah, I think someone would, as human beings, we will only start to do something drastic once shit hits the fan or is hitting the fan. But no, there are still some pretty cool technologies happening today to try to slow down the whole climate change effect. For example, huge fans sucking air, and then making concentrated carbon and then sending it down to Earth. Maybe that has an effect of slowing down things, but I don't know. I mean, based on how Earth is heating up and how all the massive floodings is happening. I mean, I haven't lived on Earth long enough to tell, but no, when you read the news, and I'm not sure if the news are being pessimistic, because only negative titles get people's attention. But yeah, I mean, in 200 years, I think if I have to imagine, people will be staying more indoors, and then we'll be taking a step towards space, but not quite there yet. Maybe ISS-like structures in space.
It could be exciting. I mean, whenever you think about 200 years, it's only 4 times the amount of time since the last time I went to the moon, and not much has happened since then. And
there you go.
in
There
terms
you
of
go.
pushing humanity out. So
Hmm.
we
Unless some really drastic things happen. Yeah. So I don't know. The thing with climate change is that it happens so gradually. It feels like boiling a frog. So yeah, and by then the frog is already cooked.
already
I,
cooked. So if it was safe and affordable, would you take a trip to space?
if it's safe and affordable, definitely, definitely, definitely. But then again, no space. Oh, how far away are we talking about?
How far would you be willing to go? To
Hmm.
orbit, to the moon? Would you consider immigrating to a city on Mars?
I don't mind being away for a year. So it depends how far now 1 year can bring me to. Yeah, because I think you do need I mean, once again, my answer is sort of limited by all those movies we watch. So right now I'm thinking about The Martian. So it sounds like a pretty Spartan kind of a living. So yeah, at the moment, since I don't have that kind of specialized training, I think the furthest I can be away is like a year, based on
Well,
some, yeah.
let's say
Mm,
that Elon actually builds the million-person city on Mars that he
mm,
wants to do, and some descendant of yours has actually migrated to Mars, and we're now 200 years in the future. It's your great, 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 I'm not sure how many greats, granddaughter has lived on Mars her entire life. She is in high school doing a history
mm,
project on what the 2020s were like, just like we might do a history project on what the 1820s were like, you know.
mm.
And she sees this video, and you know, her great 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 grandfather Lip Chean, and she's looking for some tidbit to put into her, um, you know, paper that would make her paper better than all the other papers. Do you have any suggestions for her?
Hmm. Any suggestion for her to put into a paper?
About the 2020s?
Right, about 2020s. Interesting. Oh, I would just say, no, we had great burgers here. I hope you guys have the same thing in Mars 200 years from now.
That's awesome.
Oh, think about it, it's not that straightforward to have a cow.
I know, but synthetic meat is becoming, you know, kind of more and more common.
Have you tried it before? Impossible meat and
I think I've had an Impossible hot dog,
ah,
um, but you know, I believe that's what all vegetarian, isn't it?
oh yeah,
Um,
definitely, definitely.
but I believe that there are some people that are working on actually growing like, you know, animal
Chicken.
muscle in
Mm,
laboratories, and having like, you know, something that, yeah, I gave you like this ground beef from like a cow
mm,
and this ground beef from this synthetic thing, and you
mm-hmm,
literally could, they would be identical at the
mm.
cellular level.
In that case, you're right. What would I say? In that case, I would definitely share, pictures of, of myself being on the beach in the sea. I doubt it'd be that easy to recreate those on Mars, unless you have like a whole holodeck, which you have in Star Trek, but it's not quite the same thing. Yeah.
I I know people on Mars are gonna, they're gonna be, what? You went outside without a spacesuit? You had
Mm,
like this huge ocean you can walk in and get and drown? You know,
mm,
they're like, whoa, I don't
definitely,
believe it.
definitely.
Those
Yeah,
Earthlings, they're way out there. They have a crazy imagination.
definitely. Where's the Martian shot again? I think it's somewhere in US, right? Utah or something, where there's like a whole plain of a red earth or something.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Mm,
Yeah. And you know, the way they are with like video editing and everything, the special effects guys could do so much
indeed,
too.
indeed, indeed. Yeah, interesting. Mars. And when do you think are we gonna have anything close to a warp engine, warp speed engine?
You know, I gotta imagine, you kind of like looking back at other technology. When we discover electromagnetism and the ability to detect these invisible waves going through the air and produce them to produce like radio and I mean that had to be mind blowing. You know, I mean, who could imagine that you could be talking in one room and people several miles away could hear it and nobody in between would hear it? You know, I mean, that's just like fantastic technology,
Yeah.
you know? And so whenever it comes to warp, like I don't see how it works. By the same token, I appreciate how little I know. And
Yeah.
and
All
whenever
it
you
takes
think,
is all it takes is the discovery of something fundamental. I mean, it was a discovery of the waves. I mean, what we're doing or using now are all applications of wavelengths and electromagnetic waves. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess all it takes
and
is a discovery of something magnificent.
and radio is what 140 years old, 150 years old. I mean, you know, we had thousands and thousands and thousands of years and had no clue radio existed.
True, true. Yeah, I mean, it's always now based on a discovery of something also pretty great, but less daunting before that. So to your point about the radio, I reckon we have electricity before we have radio, right? So the discovery of electricity, or was it the creation of electricity? Yeah, the
There's
start
this
of the next wave.
there's a science fiction story that I was reading. It's called what is it called? I think it's like Pandora Star or something. But it starts out with, you know, we finally get that mission to Mars, and you know they're coming in for a landing, and the Stanford students have figured out a way to travel through space using like energy, and so they decide to travel to Mars to watch the first human landing. So these astronauts are all like really excited, first step on Mars. And then they get there and they find these Stanford students going, wow, it's so good. That was a great landing. And so they were so sad because it was actually the Stanford students that were the first ones on Mars, um, not the astronauts who had flown there, because they had discovered this new way of traveling.
Yeah. All the possibilities, all the possibilities. Yeah, it's things like this that we need to make us imagine. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I think kids, small kids should definitely be exposed to this. If not for the eventual space travel, then to expand the mind.
Absolutely. And Lip Chean, I know we talked about a lot of things, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about or any questions you have?
Not at the moment, because I think we touched a little bit about a little bit of politics, a bit of economy, and the whole feasibility of space. But yeah, I don't have any particular thing to talk about. Primarily because no, I haven't really started to dig up information about the moon travel. But who knows? I might start to pay a bit more attention to any news article that has the word moon on it, and I'll arrange another chat with you. I don't know how many weeks or months from now. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I learned something new from you today. The meteor hitting the moon, creating some sort of a perfect record of how the whole Earth-Moon combo evolved through time. That's pretty cool.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Lip Chean, thank you so much for meeting with me and participating in my project. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Glad to be part of it.
And I know it's at the end of your day there, but I hope you have a good night.
Cool. And you have a good day ahead.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye, Nathan.